Oh, man. I'm too nervous. I'm too nervous to lead us into this one. This is a big one for me.
Oh, my God.
Don't be scared, John. This is what you've been waiting for.
I know,
all these
seriously.
years.
I think this might be the reason I signed up for the podcast in the first place. It was like, in the back of my mind, maybe we could talk to Andy Stanton.
If I send him a really dodgy stalker letter type thing, maybe he'll come on the show. I mean, what kind of ridiculous idea was that that worked?
It actually worked.
These last 30 episodes have just been a cunning ruse to get to this point.
Exactly. Yeah. And, we should...
I feel like our entire relationship has been a bit of a lie, John, to be honest.
Just used us as a
genuinely
some kind of stepping stone.
That's all I wanted to do.
Last 20 years.
So this is probably the point, guys, where I should tell you that I'm stepping down from doing the podcast. And
I'm just going to go and live outside Andy Stanton's house in a bin, just in case he waves to me.
Yeah, so, I don't think we need a lot of introduction, really.
There once were 3 chaps on a podcast, and many folks thought it would not last. They couldn't be more wrong, because they're on episode 31. And they're still having a bit of a blast.
In fact, before we get to Andy, we need to ask the question. Let's do the question. Tommy, let's start with you this week, because we know what Betty's going to say.
I've written loads, Betty. I'm Betty, and I've written lots of words. Oh, they're actually quite good. As it turns out, I'm a brilliant novel writer.
Get bitter.
Well, that's Dave's bit done anyway. It's not going stupidly well, but I have been dipping in and doing 1,000 words here and there.
That's good.
Yeah. It's in normal times. If it wasn't NaNoWriMo month, it'd be like, whoa, this is cool. But the kind of that big number over your head. But I think I'm probably at the point after not getting down to it in the first week and then been really busy with. I mean, everyone isn't that's literally the point of it. But it's not been great timing in terms of that. But nevertheless, like last night, I did like 1,000 words just when normally I would have just gone to bed.
That's good, Tom.
It's kind of working.
It is, and I think what I've learned as well is that I don't really want to write a novel.
Interesting. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
That's good.
I just don't think I've got the attention to drag the story through.
So what are you thinking? What would be your ideal medium?
I think maybe I need to get, like my silly little sales book that kind of got to the end. I think that's probably something in that ilk is where I'm at, really. Well, that freedom just to kind of freestyle and let it come out and kind of try the humour side. I think I just get a bit bored with the story thing because I know what's going to happen.
Right.
There is that element to it, isn't there? That you kind of, like, where you're just trying to get to, but it's going to be ages until you get there. And you just have to say,
and you've got to put all these bits in place in between time. And I wonder if that's why I've shied away from the planning thing.
Yeah.
All these years. Because then once you've done that, it's like, well, the magic's gone. It just becomes a task, doesn't it? It's just a thing. So in some ways good, in some ways bad, but in other ways also good.
Yeah, well, it's the bit like I quite fancy the idea of going to Australia, but I'm never going to go because I can't be asked with the journey. Like, I want to be there, but I don't want to go there.
You seem to be doing quite well, though, with your journey.
To Australia?
Well, no, you're not doing so well with that.
Got out of Bristol,
No,
with the book thing,
I mean, you have just polished one off and started another one and getting on quite well with it.
Yeah. Although I reached a bit of a tricky bit, the halfway point.
But
that's what everyone's always said, isn't it?
And I think what it is, or certainly for me, is that like the first half, the opening of it is a lot of fun because it's like opening a menu and you get all these options in front of you and you can follow all these threads and set a load of things up. And then there comes a point where you realise, right, I've got to start pulling all these threads together now. It's like the expansion is over. I need to start pulling this together to a point and make a decision about what's actually going to happen.
It's like some kind of massively sort of like big philosophical question, isn't it, about freedom of choice and
alternate realities hanging out before you, and then you shut them down.
But then at the middle of the story, all of it they vanish, and you've got that predetermined path you've got to follow really to get to the end. But I mean, there's different ways of getting there. Isn't there?
So it's
that's the joy from the reader. That's for the reader's joy as well, isn't it?
So you've opened a book. But what I have done, I've finally decided who the killer is, which I think is going to actually be quite useful when it comes to finishing the book.
To revealing something at the end, yes. That will be,
otherwise it would just sort of end.
Anyway, back to Dave's primary school, and it was all a dream.
And actually, nobody was dead.
Nobody was dead. Everyone was happy, and it was all
so
good.
yeah, so I had a bit of a wobble, but then I think I've overcome that wobble, and I'm on the downward slope to failure again now.
Lovely.
Very good.
John, any update from you? No, great. Right, well, moving on. So we managed to get hold of Andy Stanton through fair means and foul, I think it's fair to say. We should repost that letter on our Twitter for people to look at.
We should definitely put it, we'll stick it in the blog. How about that?
Yeah.
In the blog.
Yeah. Well, at least two of us could be bothered to turn up for the interview anyway.
Poor Birdie. Oh,
yeah, poor Birdie.
He was quite busy, wasn't he?
Was he, though?
Yeah, well, I couldn't help it. It was, I had commitments that I couldn't.
We're going to do this podcast together, Dave. I think probably being honest with each other is really.
I don't know what you mean, Tom. I think it was perfectly innocent. I just had childcare issues.
Dave, I recorded the phone call, mate.
What phone call? Hello?
Hi, mate. It's just me.
Oh, do you know what? I was just going to call you.
Oh, right. What about?
About John and his,
Author crush, yeah.
Yeah. God, he's got it bad, hasn't he?
He has, yeah. Just a bit,
Full on?
Uh-huh.
Embarrassing?
Creepy.
Stalkerish?
Yeah. I mean, kind of sweet, though, isn't it?
Yeah, in the same way a dog humping a cushion is sweet.
Yeah. Anyway, I was going to say, so I might give the interview a miss, and then...
Right, yeah, because I was going to say that too.
Oh, we can't both not do it, can we?
Well, I don't want to be there while John's getting all sexy, weird stuff.
Yeah, neither do I. Toss a coin for it?
All right.
Heads or tails?
Heads.
Okay, here we go. Ah, bollocks.
What kind of coin have you got with bollocks on? It's normally heads or tails. Hang on, is that the new 50p?
No, I mean bollocks. It's heads. You've won.
Ha! Ha! Unlucky, Tom. You're it.
Yeah, brilliant. Looking forward to playing Chaperone and Gooseberry all rolled into one.
Yeah, I'll probably just make up some excuse like I've got childcare issues or some babysitters falling through. He's daft enough to fall for that, ain't he?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, he is.
Anyway, good luck. Loser!
Yeah, thanks a lot, mate.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Oh, see you then.
See ya.
Bye. That's an invasion of privacy.
So that's how it went down.
Yeah. We can only take so much fawning, I think. But I think you behave yourself pretty well in the interview, and it is a great interview.
I think I did all right, considering my deep love for Andy Stanton.
Well, let's hear it then, shall we? I haven't heard this yet, so let's have a listen.
Shabba me timbers, we are delighted and honoured and other sycophantic words to introduce onto the podcast the one and only Andy Stanton. Hi, Andy.
Hey, hello. Hello. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. We're very grateful. I feel like I don't need to say that you're a children's book author because I sort of just assume that everyone's as big a fan as I am, but just on the off...
to hear it. Yeah, it reminds me what I'm supposed to be doing for a livelihood.
Well, on the off chance that you're not entirely sure and that people don't know, Andy Stanton is probably most famous for being the writer of the Mr. Gum series of children's books. And if you haven't read them, then shame on you.
Yeah, really?
Yeah,
who do you think
seriously. So Andy, by way of a little warm-up, could you just describe to us where you are right now and maybe what position you've assumed for the duration of this chat, just so we can visualise you in your natural habitat?
Yeah. Well, I'm in the normal place, and I've got the normal position, which in my case means that I'm in my flat in North London.
Very nice.
Which, in as far as anything can be normal, that's my normality. And I'm sitting on a chair, guys. You'll be astounded to hear.
Ah, interesting.
If you'd like a little more detail, it's a sort of 70s kind of, I think probably late 70s, early 80s sort of roundy kind of space chair. Oh, it's not a space chair, but it makes you feel like you're sitting in a spaceship because it's kind of like half a circle you're sitting on, and nice. It's got a hydraulic stand which doesn't work properly. And I bought it for about £70 on the Holloway Road from a second-hand furniture shop because it looked really great. And then about a week after I bought it, the sort of pleather started flaking off it, so it's not in disrepair. So I'm really appearing on this podcast mostly to see if there are any restorers, furniture restorers out there who can do that refurbishment of a chair like this, because I've asked around, guys, and you phone up a guy and he'll say, "Oh, I don't do that modern stuff. That's modern to them. They're
70s,
looking at doing things from 1680 or something, and they won't do it." Or there's one guy on Upper Street in Islington, and he said, "Yeah, I can do that. It will cost you, but the fabric will cost you a few £100, and then I'll do it for £550." And I thought, no. I'm not doing that well.
That's the trouble. You ask anyone, ask a layperson, and they will invariably tell you through no knowledge whatsoever that don't bother, mate. It's more expensive to get it reupholstered than it is just to buy a new one.
Well, they're right in this case.
It turns out they are, isn't it?
Yeah. So it just goes to show that if you want something done properly, don't do it.
Absolutely.
So, Andy, tell us a story. Tell us the story. Let's get back to Mr. Gum. Tell us a story.
Oh, right.
How How Mr. Gum.
And another thing, right? For 70 quid, though, I'm not upset. Sorry, it's a nice chair.
Of course, as a big bargain hunt fan, the question is, when you went into that shop, did they immediately knock off like 80% of the ticket price just because you went, what's your best price? Which seems to be always the case.
I think I do say what's your best price in a lot of places. And I like... Great, I'm glad we're talking about this. It's very, it seems to be what I want to talk about. I like to say, oh, is that the best you can do, in a nice way? And then, often they'll say, well, and then I'll go, and then, do you like Curb Your Enthusiasm, guys?
Yeah.
Because I think the way to barter is to get into a kind of Larry David. Not angry, irate, properly irritated at Larry David. Not at all. The opposite. The kind of stand back, rock on your heels, hand on chin, and go, okay. So, all right, that's interesting. So, yeah, I like it. I don't know if I love it. And you get into that, and they sort of go, well, and you go, well, and sometimes sometimes you get money off. I think it's important to try and rook small businesses for as much as you can.
Yeah,
no,
definitely.
I'll tell you what I actually think. I actually think that people like bartering, and if both parties in a barter are happy, it's a very enjoyable thing. It actually gives the salesperson more agency than you get in today's modern world. If you work at a supermarket, you can't barter with the customers. You have no agency. People who sell stuff actually enjoy, I would say, by and large, having a little game of chess with you. And if you don't want it, you don't buy it.
It's almost rude not to in some countries, isn't it? You've got to go through the process.
Oh, absolutely. So, yeah. It is a big part of the culture. So this is brilliant. So it's been a lot of fun, guys. I'm glad we got
I hate bartering. I really hate it. Oh. Yeah. I just think put your price on the ticket, and I'll just look. If we're happy with that, that's what will happen.
I've had some good experiences with bartering. I enjoy the game.
Yeah, no.
All right.
Well, we're gonna have to disagree on it, I think.
Well, we've split the room. This is terrifying.
Fundamentally opposed to bartering in any form. Find it abhorrent. It really is. It's offensive.
Wow. Okay. Cheapers. I wasn't expecting this awkwardness.
But I would be willing to move my position if we had a to and fro and talked about it, obviously.
Oh, you would, huh?
Yeah, might. Well, maybe. Maybe a little bit.
How far would you like? Maybe 10%.
Yeah, well, in my favour. Probably stretch to a 15-20% move. Given
this is what's known as meta comedy, kids.
It is, isn't it? It's like gone full loop. It's gone so full loop that it's not really funny anymore. That's how
it's so funny. It's not funny.
It's so funny. It stopped being funny. What I was going to say before, Andy, was I should have said this at the start. I should have probably spoken to you separately, to be honest. But you probably gathered from John's weird stalking letter in order to invite you on the show that he is like a embarrassingly large super fan.
I did reading between the lines, and also not just between the lines, reading the lines themselves. I actually managed to pick up. So
there might be moments in the next.
I didn't mean to scare you, Andy. I hope I didn't scare you.
When I saw this
point.
letter that I think you scanned it or photographed it and put it up on Twitter and sort of copied my name in so that it would be banter past my face. I did think, these guys look like a couple of weirdos, but then I also thought, but I'm quite cantankerous. Maybe it will all look like more fun tomorrow. So I slept on it. And when I looked at it the next day, I thought, you know what? They still look like weirdos. I'll sleep on it one more day. And then the next day, I thought, they look like weirdos, but nice weirdos. And I'm very flattered. So thank you. I think it's a lovely thing to be asked to be on your show. Especially enjoy the Failing Writers podcast. You've spoken to a lot of writers, am I correct?
Yeah.
We have.
I would imagine that quite a few of them have said, I feel like a failing writer sometimes, even though I do that for a living.
Yeah. Unanimously.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
There you go. That's what most of...
we're all failing writers, but just on different levels.
That's exactly right. I liked the idea. I enjoyed the flattery. Thank you, guys. You're very funny lads. Well done. And I really like the idea of talking about the vicissitudes and sometimes joys of writing. So here I am. But turns out that what I really want to talk about is this chair. But let's put that. Let's table the chair for a moment. Right.
Yeah. So.
How's it going, guys? I'm really making it hard for you.
No, I think it feels like it's flowing beautifully.
It's going to be a great edit.
This is where the edit comes in.
Well, you probably know that I enjoy playing with form. If you know my books,
yes,
I like to. So I'm just giving you a little taste of how tiring it is to actually be me.
Actually, Andy, I've got a question for you. Speaking of editing, because your books come across as, and then take this in the way it's meant, as quite as raw,
awful,
and
just
fresh,
awful. Please take it in the way that I intend. But they come across as really they're very lousy. Oh, okay. Well, I will. Thank you. As raw and unedited, that's hilarious.
No, but kind of like really, I think it gives them a life, doesn't it?
They've
got such a spark and a life to them that they feel like they've not been. Some books you can tell have been edited within an inch of the life, and it kind of flattens out the life in them.
It's a great starting point, a great talking point.
But are yours?
My books are. I edit my books,
right?
Sorry, I mean I edit with brilliant editors.
Yeah,
it's not. But they are edited by me and by my editor to within 1,000th of a thousandth of a thousandth of an inch of their lives. The trick is to make it seem fresh and effortless.
Yeah,
which I hopefully pull off more than I don't. But I am absolutely, ridiculously, horrifically exacting.
That is quite interesting.
And I might at some point send you a little document showing you some of my notes for one of the books. We'll see. It won't be for public consumption probably, but I've driven probably more than one editor or a copy editor to an early grave with my. I literally have notes and notes and notes, even as it's going to press. Even if it's a week before, 3 days before, and I.
Oh my God!
I
must love that.
Well, yes and no, mostly no. No. I'll rethink a comma 3 times, or I want a hyphen instead of a comma, or I've often asked in the Mr. Gum books to change the pagination, to cheat the pagination a bit, so a particular punchline will appear at the top of the next page instead of the end of the page we're on.
Right.
And it's to that. I haven't done this for a while. I haven't written a Mr. Gum book for a while, so I'm trying to. I can't even remember how exacting I am, but it's even worse than I'm explaining, than I'm describing. But yes, I will be, and then I'll see something that we can do with the illustrations, and I'll go, hey, could we actually reuse that illustration? There's an illustration in book 4 where Mr. Gum is chasing the heroine Polly, where it's a chapter called Chasing Time. I said, let's reuse that illustration. Let's put it on the next page, but move Mr. Gum a bit closer to Polly, and then let's reuse it again on the next page and move them closer again. I'll be doing. I'm editing the text for all sorts of things. I'm changing one word in a joke because I feel like it clashes with a word 75 pages later. No lie. I'm changing commas. I'm changing full stops, hyphens. I'm changing where the words fall on the page, and I'm saying, hey, we can get an extra game out of the illustration with the text. And that.
So it's all pretty loose then. It just kind of whatever comes out.
Loose is probably the word that I'm trying to. That's probably the takeout from what I'm trying to say.
So this very strong sense that you're having a really fun time writing these books, and it's just flowing out of you, is all just total crap.
Well,
is it actually painful for you?
Oh yeah.
Or do you quite enjoy being that exacting?
The exacting bit is. It's not exactly painful, that exacting bit, because you're only being that exacting when you've got something to be exacting with. So that means you've basically done the book, and you've done enough drafts that it's basically happening now, and you can go down to the wire on those things. There are still things that I wish I hadn't cut, or tiny things that no one else would ever notice in a million years that I wish I'd put in the books, or I hadn't, or just got, I missed one trick. Oh, I got 2007 tricks done in that book, but I missed one. It's like when you're on stage and you're trying to make people laugh, and any comedian will tell you this, but you always see the one person not laughing. It doesn't matter if you're bringing down the Albert Hall. Yeah. There's one guy, J16, didn't crack a smile, and that's all you think about. So that's what I think about. I think, there was one more joke I didn't put in that book. That bit is actually like watchmaking to me. That's really enjoyable, although it drives me bonkers to be that exact thing. It's the actual writing that I find really painful. It's lovely that you think it flows. When the actual writing and invention and story making is flowing, it can happen. It's a lovely feeling. I'm sure you must have experienced it at some points, and you really feel like you're in the flow, you're in the beat. To me, it feels like everything is. You know, if you were playing sport, it would be like, oh, he's seeing the ball like a grapefruit, don't they say? And that's when you just sort of, you're holding the story lightly but tightly at the same. You're in control of it, but you feel like you can see it from all angles. You can see what move to make next. That's rare when you get into that flow. Mostly for me, the writing bit, that's the pain. Getting to the end of a first draft is the hardest.
And how long would that normally take you, or does it massively depend on just how you're feeling, whatever the book is that you're writing? Or
piece of string question, isn't it? I'll tell you how it mostly worked for Mr. Gum, which is that firstly you're looking for an idea. The idea can take months. It can when it comes, you go, oh, it came in the second. No, it took months of rejecting other ideas. Let's say I've got an idea that I think will start off a Mr. Gum book, and I think I can see an ending in sight. I've got some idea of where it might end up, and I feel like there's enough to sustain a middle. So let's just say I've got an idea in 3 seconds flat for the sake of argument. How long does it then take to write? Okay, if I'm lucky, that first draft, and these books are only about 11,000 words, not very much, but they've got to be the right words. That might take me, if I'm lucky, I'll get a first draft in 3 weeks, but more likely I'll start that story, get a third of the way through and decide it hasn't got legs, or I'll get a third of the way through and decide that there's a better story, that this isn't.
Oh, wow. Go back to the beginning.
It's a difficult process to describe. I'm very inefficient. Okay, let me put it another way. Mr. Gum is about 11,000 words. For most of those books, I wrote at least 30,000 and probably as much as 50,000 for some of them. So how'd you like them? Apples.
That's a lot of apples.
That's a lot of. It's
Isn't
too many
it?
apples. Yeah, and some of them aren't very good, and you have to get rid of those ones. I've written entire manuscripts of Mr. Gum, got to the end of the first draft, and then thought, hate it. I wrote the second book, Mr. Gum and the Biscuit Billionaire, second book. I have an entire book called Mr. Gum and the Biscuit Billionaire, which is a completely different story. Got to the end of it, hated it, and rewrote. I kept one thing. I kept the character, the Biscuit Billionaire, who is a gingerbread man with electric muscles called Alan Taylor, who's got £1 billion.
I love the idea that you've rewritten the entire book, but there's just like I can't be asked changing the title.
Well, I like the.
I'll have to keep in.
I like the character, but I got the wrong story for him.
Right.
I'll briefly summarise the two stories, and you can see if you think I picked the right one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So the one that was published, Mr. Gum and the Biscuit Billionaire, a gingerbread man with electric muscles called Alan Taylor comes to town, and he's got £1 billion in a biscuit tin, and he doesn't really understand about friendship. So he tries to impress everyone with his money rather than get to know them. So he throws a massive fun fair to impress the town and win his favour. Mr. Gum and Billy William III, the villains, then steal his money at the fun fair. Alan Taylor gets depressed and retires to bed. The heroines, Polly and Friday O'Leary, track down Mr. Gum and Billy, recover the money, there's a big fight, and Alan Taylor has learnt the power of friendship, and everything's fine, right? That's the published version. The first version was also called Mr. Gum and the Biscuit Billionaire. A gingerbread man with electric muscles called Alan Taylor with £1 billion in a biscuit tin came to town. He threw a fun fair to impress everybody. In this story, he had a girlfriend called Chocolatey Claire, who was a cake. Alan Taylor and Chocolatey Claire went in the tunnel of love during the fun fair, and when they emerged, Chocolatey Claire had been eaten. And Alan Taylor was then framed for murdering Chocolatey Claire by Mr. Gum and Billy, who threw a kangaroo court trial for him to convict him of murdering his girlfriend, when in fact it had been Mr. Gum who had been hiding in the tunnel of love and eaten Chocolatey Claire. And they sentenced Alan Taylor to death by foxecution, because I was thinking of the gingerbread man in the story who gets eaten by a fox in the river. So they had a fox who was going to eat Alan Taylor. Death by. So it was a story about murder, framing and capital punishment. Do you think I chose the right story? I think I did. But that's also reminded me there was another version of Mr. Gum and the Biscuit Billionaire where Alan Taylor was the headmaster of a school, which he kind of is. But in this one, he transformed, I think in a full moon or something, into a character called Oliver Knuckles, I think, who was he was a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And basically, let me tell you, I've got a lot of drafts on my computer the world is never going to see, but that should give you some of the ideas, some idea about how hard it is for me to find a story. And by the way, the story where Alan Taylor was a headmaster and it focused on the school had the heroine Polly going to school, and my heroine is 9 years old, and you never hear about her parents. I think there's one reference to her parents to her mum in book 1, but that's it. And you never hear about whether she goes to school or not. She actually seems to exist in her own kind of reality. She seems to live alone. You don't really hear. It's like Charlie Brown. You never see the adults, right? Snoopy. You never hear about school. Sending her to school seemed to be playing. It's the opposite of jazz. You're meant to. It's the notes you don't play, right?
Yeah.
I found that sending Polly to school and making her into more of a normal kid was playing the wrong notes. It was playing the notes that I should keep silent.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the story I wanted to tell. So these are the things that I think about. These rules, these things that stop me from writing or stop me from writing certain stories. I hate children's books that are about municipal things. I was always very depressed as a child, full stop. I was always very depressed as a child by stories that involved anything to do with mechanical diggers or trains or engines or lorries. I just did. I instinctively just thought, I hate that world. It's so banal. So in Mr. Gum, there's never any of that. There's never anything municipal, really. Or if it's there, it's only there as a mundane joke to make the world crappy for a moment.
Yeah, and that's the same with Roald Dahl, isn't it? He would just extract you out of this sort of, out of the family home and out of schools and out of that kind of world.
Well, that's right. But I borrowed a lot from Roald Dahl, but mostly what I borrowed was the idyll of the type of English country town or village that a lot of his stories would take place in, which were probably more real for him and more realistic, I mean, at the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
But which now, I'm taking a photocopied version of that and using it as like a trope of kids' stories. It's like, we all know that there aren't really that many towns like that these days. And again, I keep chain stores and that sort of mentality out of my books. It's all old-fashioned shops and stuff in my books, because I'm riffing off a trope that people like Roald Dahl set up as more of a reality in their time.
That's very interesting. I can't quite believe it's so painful.
You can't believe there's actually a thinking brain behind this shit, can you? A lot of people can't. You're not the first.
I think that's the beauty of it, though. Could you tell us the story of how Mr. Gum came about in the first place? Because I think that might give us a sort of an idea of. Do
you know this story? Because I'm going to tell you either way. But have you ever? I talk about this a lot. Have you read this anywhere?
I have. Yeah.
This is kind of the opposite of what I was just talking about in some ways, although still related. So I wasn't doing much with my life, and I had a lot of ideas. They go through my head, you can probably tell. And I'm very bad at developing them. I was about 30, something like that, and I was in danger of becoming one of those people who you sometimes see at parties. What do you do? Well, I'm working at the NHS, but I really want to do something creative. And then you see them a year later, don't you? And then you go, what are you doing? And you go, well, I'm still at the NHS. And I love the NHS, by the way. I really do. And this, I was working at the NHS. That's why I'm using it as an example. I was a temp. But I love the NHS, don't get me wrong. But it wasn't my calling. But people would see me again. What are you doing? Well, I'm still at the NHS, but I still want to do something creative. I wasn't doing anything. Have all these ideas. Any idiot can have ideas, as someone more clever than me has said. But it's what you do with it that counts, right? I wasn't doing anything. I got so frustrated of never developing anything, never seeing if I could back myself. But I wasn't developing these things. I wasn't actually putting myself to the test. It was Christmas Eve, maybe 2000, and 2002 even. Christmas Eve 2002, I was house sitting at a cousin's house. I was going to see a bunch of my cousins the next day for Christmas. They all had kids that were about 7, 8, 9 at that time. I really like kids of that age. I really like playing with their brains. I really like talking to them and just conversing with that sort of age group. I have an affinity for them. And I thought, right, God damn it, I don't want to just be that, the funny uncle, the guy at the party. I'm going to see if I can finish a story from start to finish. I'm going to write a story and I'm going to read it to them on Christmas Day like we're in Victorian times, right? And I had, at that time, a floppy disk with me. That's how long ago this was, 2002. I had a floppy disk, 3.5 inch or whatever it was. And I stuck it into my cousin's computer, I was house sitting, and I opened it up, and there were a few scraps of writing. They were like literally a line here, a paragraph there. I thought, right, I'll choose one of these things and I will run with it. There was probably about 60 words saying, oh, there was a horrible old man called Mr. Gum and a big dog got into his village. I thought, fine, roll with it. I started writing. It was 11 o'clock Christmas Eve, 2002. And I started writing. And I just wrote forward. It's the hardest thing to do. It's the hardest thing is to just write. Don't worry about how crap it is. Don't edit as you go along. Don't look back. Just keep adding. Add. If it was an improvisation, you'd call it yes and. Keep your yes your ideas and add to them. Yes your ideas and add to them. And that's what I did. As I wrote, all these other characters came into the story. I thought, oh, Mr. Gum seems pretty horrible. I had better give him a sidekick friend who's just as stupid or even more stupid to him. That will be funny. Who would be the friend of a man like that? Oh, a horrible butcher, Billy William III. About 5 chapters in, I realised that this definitely feels like a kid's story, but there are no kids in it. Okay, I better have a kid. Who shall it be? All right, up until now, everybody has basically been a grotesque old man. I better put some feminine energy into this thing. And great, I came up with a 9-year-old girl called Polly, who is my favourite character. But this was just an improvisation with myself. I've put those in place. What does that lead to? A horrible sidekick. What do 2 horrible old men need to counteract them? A really plucky young girl. So all these characters just strolled in. I wrote for 7 hours straight, 8 hours straight. It was 6, 7 a.m. Christmas morning. The birds were chirping outside. I typed the end. All I wanted to do was just do this to see if I could finish something. I read it to my cousins on Christmas Day. They didn't listen to me that much because it was like formalising our relationship a bit. I'm going to read you a story now, kids. And also, they'd had too much chocolate. They were overexcited. It was Christmas. I read it to them. I thought, brilliant. I have proven myself. I felt like a bit of an idiot reading it and sort of getting a funny, getting a half-interested reaction off my cousins. I took it home and I forgot about it for 2 years. 2 years later, I found it in a drawer. I thought, this is really good. I made a few very small changes to it. I thought it was very short, although it was very dense with meaning and funnies.
So you added some spaces.
I added some spaces, yeah, just to fool the agents. I added the subroutine of Jonathan Ripples, Martin Laundrette, and a little girl called Peter, who functioned sort of as a Greek chorus throughout that book. And I thought, so it was probably just to pad it out a bit, but it seemed like a funny routine that could recur through the books, which it did. And then I sent it off to some agents, basically, and that's the story. So to cut a long story about a short story short, that's the only time in my life that I've ever been able to really... There's one night in my life where I accidentally gave myself a commission and a career, and it was just from writing without fear, writing forward and improvising with myself and not worrying about the quality till later. That's the story. It sounds like a fairy tale. You don't write your first book in one night, and that book doesn't go on to be a series and a best-selling series in 35 countries or whatever it's in, but it did.
I was believing you. I believed it all, Andy, until you started saying it was Christmas Eve. Then you just stretched it too far. It just becomes unbelievable.
I know.
Was it snowing? Was it snowing as well outside, and were the children carol singing? And was it just
in the
sure, why not? And then I bought the biggest turkey in the lot.
Yeah.
But the thing about that story is that it's very rare to write with such flow.
Yeah.
But also that flow was born out of, in its own turn, years and years of frustration and annoyance at myself for not doing that stuff. So even then, did I write it in one night or did I write it in 20 years of getting frustrated with myself, or 15 years of getting, a little of both?
Yeah.
You're like the human personification of this podcast.
Well, that's, like I say, I saw the title of it and I thought that's the podcast for me, guys.
Yeah, one of the other ways that you managed to elongate the book was to you gave Polly a full
Oh,
name.
well, that's...
Can you remember her full name off by heart, by the way, just out of interest?
Well, I can, but I can't prove it to you that I'm not reading it off anything, but that wouldn't be any fun, would it? But yeah, Polly's full name is Jammy, Grammy, Lammy, for Hopper, Berlin, Stereo, EO, Lebb, Siep, Nermonica, Straypek, de Grespin, de Spespin, de Vespin, de Whoop, de Loop, de Brunkle, Merry Christmas, Lenoir. But most people call her Polly to save timing for convenience's sake. But yeah, that was in the first draft without a single change. And that was like a microcosm of how I wrote that night, which was I introduced this girl into the book. She immediately seemed like she was going to be the straight man or the straight girl to all the idiotic adults around her. But I wanted to, looking back on it, I think I wanted to codify her. So although she's the straight one, she's the sensible one.
Yeah.
She's still the part of that cartoon world.
Yes, she's not normal.
Yeah.
There's still some element of...
Exactly. So you don't want to make your heroes or heroines all good, and you don't want to make your villains all bad, which is pretty basic stuff. You want to have sympathetic villains and flawed heroes, or at least interesting heroes. So so she's an interesting mix of virtue and morals, but also she's still properly a 9-year-old girl with a bit of tomboy in her. And she's also of that world, so although she's Polly, secretly in her DNA, she's Jammy, Grammy, Lammy, so she's of that world. And the other thing about her, which you probably know, is that she has really bizarre diction.
Yes.
Which is like, she
pluralises a lot of things.
She pluralises a lot of things because she sort of says, "I hate Mr. Gum." So a lot of parents reading to their kids do Polly as West Country because of the "I hates that" or "he hates that." She's not West Country in my head. They especially do it if they're from that part of the country, which is it's all fine. It's all cricket. Their book to do with what they want. In my head, she's like a Cockney street urchin, right? Or that's her. But basically, she's kind of like a street urchin with the diction of a Mississippi bluesman. And that's how I think of her. So she's just got really, really idiosyncratic. They've all got quite idiosyncratic ways of talking, but Polly takes the prize for that. So because she's the straightest character, she has to have other things built into her DNA for that, to be of that same world. So yeah, these are all things I think about. I can tell you so many interesting to me secrets of the things that tie those books up under the surface. I'll tell you one more because I find it interesting.
Yeah.
I mentioned Snoopy and Charlie Brown before, Peanuts. Yeah. I always loved in Peanuts how... and by the way, the title, You're a Bad Man, Mr. Gum, which is the first book. Oh, that first night, by the way, when I wrote the book in one night, as it were, the story for a while was just called The Story of Mr. Gum. But by the time I sent it off to agents 2 years later, I'd found a better title, which is You're a Bad Man, Mr. Gum, which was stolen completely for rhythm and intent from You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, which is one of the name of one of those Snoopy compendiums, those little paperbacks back in the 70s, and it's just got such a lovely rhythm. You're a bad man, Mr. Gum. I'm sure Schultz is responsible for most of my financial success just for that rhythm. And but the other thing, the more subtle thing I took from Snoopy is that I always loved in Peanuts how the characters referred to each other differently depending on who was speaking to who, right? So Marcy, who dotes on Peppermint Patty, always calls Peppermint Patty Sir, even though Peppermint Patty is a girl. Marcy's got this thing, she always calls Peppermint Patty Sir. Peppermint Patty refers to Snoopy as the funny looking kid with the big nose. Peppermint Patty calls Charlie Brown Chuck, but no one else does. And there's a few others, I think. But that basically what I'm saying is that the characters have different relationships and modes of address for each other. And I took that Mr. Gum. For example, there are rules in Mr. Gum which emerged as I went along. One is Mr. Gum and Billy must never basically know Polly's name. They must always refer to her as that horrible little girl. Everybody has to call Alan Taylor first and last name at all times, except for Mr. Gum, who only ever calls Alan Taylor. Polly refers to Jonathan Ripples as Jonathan Ripples Sir, just like Marcy calls Peppermint Patty Sir, but no one else does. And Friday calls Polly Little Miss. And the Spirit of the Rainbow always calls Polly Child, even though he's no older than she is. So what I'm trying to say is that I thought it was such a neat thing that it would put glue in under the story. It would put dynamics in under the story that you won't be aware of them at that level. But it will make you feel like these are a group of characters who dynamically interrelate with each other and hold each other in different relation.
Yeah, that's a lovely way of doing it.
Well, I learned from the best.
Did that just happen organically then, as the characters grew out of it, or did you have to work that?
I think it was quite conscious that I'd always admired that in shorts,
right.
And it became thicker as more characters in books down the line came in, because Alan Taylor wasn't even in the first book. But just Friday calling Polly Little Miss in the first book, I could almost guarantee, if we went back to 2002, that what was going through my head was, it would be cool to cement the reality of these two by giving them different relationship games with each other because of shorts.
Do you have a policy, just thinking about the nuts and bolts of putting your books together, do you have a policy on like gag ratio? Because there seems to be at least one really good gag on every page. Do you almost have that in your head, like, okay, I need something in here, or does it just sort of happen?
Oh God, you've got to have gags. It's a book about it. But
almost to the extent where you're like, okay, I need one there, I need one there, or is it just wherever it feels right?
You get them where it feels right. But the problem with gags is that they stop narrative, or they take it side. Narrative wants to go forward, right? Gags take you to the left or the right, or they stop it altogether. If we were in an improvisational comedy scene and you started off with, "What a lovely day it is for a picnic, isn't it?" And I said, well, we're not even outside, and we haven't got a picnic, and I don't even know what a picnic is because we're on Mars, right? I've done a gag that builds and builds and builds on itself and actually trampled you into the ground, and it's kind of an interesting gag in some ways. But where's the scene gone? I've just popped the reality, so it's broken. It's stopped the narrative. It's what you'd call blocking in improvisation, and it's the opposite of yes and. So the trick is to make gags, but move the narrative forward at the same time. Writing a book is hard enough, writing a story is hard enough at the best of times, and all books are hard to write. But with comedic writing, you have to advance forward whilst bringing your wingmen, or your wingwomen, or whatever you want to call them, your gags, along with you, all at the same time. It's sometimes great to go on a big digression if that's the joke, but you have to know when to end that digression and pull us back to the story as well. And then if you've done one big digression and then 3 pages later there's another big digression, your narrative is going to start suffering. So the trick is always to advance plot, character, actual emotional stakes, and get those side cheerleaders, the gags, to come forward with you at the same time.
So you've had to leave some pretty good gags on the cutting room floor then over the years.
You've got no idea. Entire routines.
Right.
Entire routines, or some routines end up in the books but cut down because they overstayed their welcome. It's all, another rule of thumb for comedy is don't overstay your welcome.
Yeah.
If you look at the average length of a Hollywood drama, it's going to be more like 120 minutes, as compared to the average length of a Hollywood comedy. It's going to be more like 90 minutes. Comedy works better and gets it, but comedy has a different framework and demands a different treatment, and shorter is best. Like my books are short even for the age range that I'm writing for. They're not it's not a haiku, but they're so dense with gags that I just they're the length they are for a reason. You can go back and read them again and find more stuff in there, but like, again, this is analogous to all writing. You're always, whatever type of writing you're doing, funny or not, you're always trying to balance what your effect is and whether you're boring the reader or whether you're adding to this. So it's analogous. Comedy has its own rules, but they are also transferable to other skills and tools that you use during, in all manner of writing.
Have you had this all your life, Andy? This want of playfulness and in your head, like when you're at school and you're doing English, was it always there?
Correct, absolutely, 100%. I've got I've got old text, workbooks from when I was 8 or 9, and there's stuff in there that like could almost just go straight into Mr. Gum.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's playing with fake endings or just talking to the reader or all sorts of things that I had in me really, really early on. Just mucking around with the conventions of stories.
How did that fit in with academic life in terms of teachers and?
The teachers who liked me and liked that in me really encouraged it, and other teachers it drove them absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, it was like if there was someone there who had the ear for that or recognised that was a good thing, they were my champion.
Yeah.
There was a really great teacher of mine who I totally fancied when I was about 8 called Miss Yates. She looked a bit like an art teacher, if you know what I mean. She had the cool haircut and dangly earrings, but she was an English teacher, but she loved my stuff. She actually taught me one of the most important lessons as a writer I've been taught in my life, which is she loved my stuff, but she would call me out if it was bullshit too. There was one thing I did that was just, we had a writing exercise to do. She gave us, we had to make this story with these characters she gave us. It was a really cool exercise. She gave us like 5 types out of sword and sorcery type stories, right? There was a hero with a sword and there was a wizard. They all had names and stuff. There was a dwarf called Little John. There was there was a magician. And she said, right, here are your characters. They're all trapped in a dungeon, right? What happens? How do they get out? Right, how they get out? And they've got to get out and get them out onto the edge of a forest or something, right? The next day, she said, right, all your characters are in the forest now. Now they've got to cross the forest. What perils do they face? And they've got to get to the river. Or what? She got us basically writing a sword and sorcery adventure, chapter by chapter, day by day.
Wow.
We didn't, with these characters she'd given us, and we could do anything. So I started playing this game where everyone hated Little John in my band of brothers, right? And whatever was happening, it would be Little John who got attacked. And he would just get and I started drawing in the story Little John's medical report card every day. And he was like, by about day 3, he had like about 9 daggers stuck in him. He had stinging nettle rashes. He had like one of his legs was half chopped off or whatever. Right? He had plague. I can't remember what. Right? About day 4, Miss Yates says to me, she writes on my book, this is really, really funny. This is classic you, but I don't see 1 ounce of emotion in this. Where's the emotion? Where's the story? That's the lesson.
Yeah, it's a good lesson.
But I'll tell you what happened though. So the next day, wanting to do anything to please Miss Yates, I had that day we all decided to gather around Little John and, Little John, we love you so much. We're so sorry you've gone through all these vicissitudes, right? Right, and I started over-egging it the other way. It was like, oh, Little John, we never told you how much we really emotionally think about you, right? And then and then the wizard said, I found these herbs of healing, right? I've got these herbs of healing, and I was really pouring the syrup on now to answer this criticism, yeah. And they restored Little John back to full health, and I showed his medical card, and then it said, Little John, almost as good as new, right? Last day of the adventure. The heroes had gone through all these things and they were going to win the day, right? So I ended my story, and then so they vanquished the last beast, defeated the last foe or whatever, and then they were all rewarded with gold and cups and silver and blood and medals and shields and right? Blah 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 blah. And then the very last line of my story was, and then Little John died of exhaustion in the end. So I did, but so even then I had to be a smart ass about it and win the game. But actually, the important lesson as a writer, you've got to write emotion, even if you're doing funny.
It's
stuff.
got to matter, hasn't it? Ultimately, you've got to care. Otherwise, you've lost everyone.
It's stakes, emotional stakes, and characters are as important in a humorous story as they are in any other story, or it is just. And then he fell in some trifle, and then a cat exploded out of his eye, and then a man came up selling radiators, and he had 1,000 legs, and it's like, yeah, okay, great. Who cares? So, and then another way later on, my all-time favourite TV program, or just absolute inspiration, is the first 8 seasons or so of The Simpsons, right? And I was a really big Simpsons nerd.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of there's a bit of Springfield in Lamonic Bibber, the town in the Mr. Gun books, in that whatever geographical features need to serve the story suddenly seem to appear in Lamonic Bibber, and that's borrowed from Springfield.
There's a lot of playing with form as well, isn't there, in the Simpsons?
Of course. It was totally I used to watch it so much. I didn't have Sky, but a friend did when it first came out. It was just on Sky. He used to video. God, this is all so old, really dating me. He wrote it on a floppy disk. He used to use VHS tapes and wax cylinders, and he used to tape me on long play. Do you remember long play? You could make a 4-hour tape into an 8-hour tape. I think they were shown like twice a day on Sky or something. He'd get me like 15, 20 episodes, put them on a long play VHS, and I would just binge them to the extent that I remember falling asleep one night and hallucinating tiny Simpsons characters running around my pillow as I fell asleep. Like I could see them. I would see them. But then when they were all available on DVDs, I started collecting the DVDs, and I watched every one with the commentary on as well.
Wow.
I would watch the episodes with the commentary and hear the creators talking about them. And same story. The composer, not Danny Elfman, who did the theme, but Alf Clausen was the guy who scored the episodes. He said he never played to the comedy or the content of the scene. He would try and find the score that underscored the emotional truth of the scene. So that, again, is another long way of saying always keep the whatever I'm doing on the surface of Mr. Gum, there has to be emotional core going on underneath. And Miss Yates taught me that, and The Simpsons taught me that.
Well done, Miss Yates.
Absolutely.
There's a bit in a Guardian article from a few years ago where you're quoted as saying, a kid asked me in a letter if there was a message in the Mr. Gum stories, and I wrote back that the message is that life is pretty stupid quite a lot of the time, but we may as well try to be nice to each other. Which I thought that was a great way of actually summing up the feel of the books. Well, it does. It's just got that core underneath everything.
Another thing I love about The Simpsons, which makes it my number one, is the heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big on heart and big on warmth.
Yeah,
and so that's important to me.
There's definitely that parallel theme, isn't there? Because The Simpsons is very much about being big on heart and the warmth, like you say, despite the people involved. Despite those rough characters.
Absolutely. I mean, I think Matt Groening says, look, all these terrible things happen. Bart gets bullied at school. Homer strangles Bart. They've got a dysfunctional family. But at the end of the episode, they're all sitting there. You know, everything's turned out well. It's hard. It's hard. The Simpsons at its best did triple duty on everything. Every moment, advance plot, character, and gags all at once, all going forward, and warmth. And I'm not really a Family Guy fan because it's anti-hot. And it's stridently and purposefully anti-hot.
Yeah, Family Guy's interesting in that, isn't it?
It is interesting, but they clearly started out with that intention. Even so, even though they try to be bleak and try to pop every shibboleth and taboo, as the series went on, the only way to sustain those characters was to actually admit some emotional heart into it. I still don't like it. I'm fascinated by it, and sometimes it more often than not makes me go, that would be funny if I cared, or that would be fun, or I can see why that's funny.
I was going to say, that's what I was just going to say before. Family Guy for me, I quite like it, but it's you know what you're saying before about the narrative's got to be driving everything, and then things. Family Guy is like gag-driven narrative.
Well, yeah,
where the gags kind of drag it into places that it wasn't going to go, but it needs to, because that's funny. We need to keep that. So then it just gets a bit topsy-turvy.
Yeah, and like I say, I think over time you would look at Family Guy and see where they started going. The characters have to relate to each other more. Whether it was an actual discussion or it just tended that way. If you don't put in some foundations underneath, you may as well be reading Christmas cracker jokes, good ones.
But brings up quite sorry if this is too a deeper question, but what is your favourite Christmas cracker joke, Andy?
Oh, boy.
Because I used to love annoying everyone in the family, in any family that I was spending time with, by guessing the punchline to Christmas cracker jokes.
We do that routinely. I like the ones that are inept, and a lot of them are.
You can't guess them though, can you? Yeah, those I don't like.
No. Well, yes. Well, some of them. Well, yes. There's many ways to be inept. My particular favourite type of inept Christmas cracker joke is the one that reuses a word in the feed line and the punchline.
So you've discounted that. You've discounted that as you guess, because it wouldn't be, and then then they say
I mean,
right?
But sometimes you can still guess them even so. But it's such a rule. Like, I mean, there's a joke about mince pies, as in mince pies sounds like spies, doesn't it? And the joke, what's the feed line? It's something like, what are the most, I don't know, secretive Christmas cakes? It should be, right? Mince pies.
What's James Bond's favourite Christmas treat?
That's right. Thank you. What's James Bond's favourite Christmas treat? mince pies. And it's a rubbish joke, but a way to make that instantly more rubbish, and Christmas crackers routinely do this, is, what is James Bond's favourite Christmas pies? Mince pies.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, you don't really know how to.
But then you get the
toasty.
worst
That's
ones
adorable.
where you
It's like,
go, what's James Bond's favourite Christmas treat? And you go, mince spies. And they go, no, it's from Trifle with Love, I think, or something. You think, well, do you know, it's completely random. It's not a punch. That doesn't.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do rubbish jokes. My favourite joke in The Simpsons ever, I've got two actually, but I think the one that's germane to what we're talking about now is Krusty the Clown and Bette Midler are hanging out. Krusty's doing a comeback special. He's got all these celebrities on, right? And so he's invited all these celebrities to help him get his career back on track. Bette Midler's one of the guest stars. They're hanging out in the dressing rooms, and Bette's going, "Oh, it's so good to see you again, Krusty." And yeah, remember that racehorse we bought together? That was a disaster. And she goes, "Yeah, Crudler, that was a disaster." So like they've called this racehorse Crudler after Krusty and Midler, right? Great in itself, because Crudler is such an ugly,
just a crap name
formation. Yeah. But it's even better when you realise what they missed calling it, which was the other half of Midler and the other half of Krusty, which results in a racehorse called Misty, which is beautiful.
That is good.
And they've called it Crudler. And it's so subtle, because it's funny even if you don't get the bonus joke. And the bonus joke makes it one of my top 2 jokes in The Simpsons ever.
I think maybe just as a final little flourish then, I should ask you, what do snowmen eat for lunch?
Oh, Jesus. What do snowmen eat for lunch or Christmas lunch? Just for lunch?
Just for generic, everyday lunch.
Just for...
The timer's on, Andy.
Jesus.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to rush you for an answer.
Hold on a second. I want to get...
It's a bad one.
Fission precipitation. I don't know what is it. Yeah, it sounds bad. What is it?
Iceburgers.
Iceburgers?
I mean, that's not even... That's one of those ones, isn't it?
Hold on.
So it's not an iceberg. Iceberg doesn't
No,
really relate to snowmen.
breakfast.
Well, iceberg doesn't relate to snowmen, and it doesn't sound like a type of food. Like, it doesn't sound like hamburgers, does it?
Doesn't sound like burgers, does it? Yeah, no, it's terrible. Terrible.
That's horrific. Is that a real Christmas cracker joke?
This, yeah. This is on the list of 50 worst Christmas cracker jokes.
Oh well, it should be. I don't know where you buy your Christmas crackers, but I want in.
I want more of them.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, dear.
Absolutely. What?
I feel ill.
What do you call Father Christmas on the beach, John? This is your turn. What do you call Father Christmas on the beach?
I know this one.
Father Christmas on the beach.
Come on, think about it. It's obvious.
Sand to Claus. No.
I think it's Sandy Claus.
I'm afraid I can't give you that, John. We can only
Claus.
accept the correct answer, which is Sandy Claus. The bonus point goes over to Andy, I'm afraid.
Oh.
That's. I feel ill again.
Yeah.
Horrible. Just sullied, I think is the word.
And for your jackpot final question, Andy, you've made it through to the final there by stealing those points off John. The final question is, what says O-O-O?
What says O-O-O?
Yep. I mean, it's badly written. It should say who says, but I don't know if they're trying to put...
How are you spelling the O?
O-H-O-H-O-H.
Oh, okay. Well, it's like... It's some sort of Australian Father Christmas or backwards Father Christmas.
That's quite racist, saying Australia now, Andy. You can't say that. But it is indeed.
Yeah, it's quite racist, which is fine. But, compared to how racist everyone is these days.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter, actually.
What's the answer?
Santa walking backwards.
Jesus.
Which that's such a beautiful one, because that really doesn't work. Because it should be who says, not what says.
Yeah.
And it's not Santa walking backwards, really, is it? Because it's just
it's
facing the wrong way.
It could be Santa walking backwards, but the truth is that when you walk backwards, you don't automatically reverse your speech. So like it's not a given by any means.
Not,
in fact, I literally don't think I've ever been with somebody who started walking backwards and talking backwards. I have been with people who started walking backwards for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think the punchline for that one should actually be "atnas," shouldn't it?
Yeah,
which would work. Really
that's just a really weird and sinister joke now, but it should be Atnas. Yeah, I don't know why it's sinister. It just feels arcane. Just like this word, it should be in capitals as well. Atnas, and then just like
sounds like the kind of Russian spy agency that they would think of in a 1960s spy drama, doesn't it? Man from Uncle kind of thing.
That's exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Atnas.
Except he lets himself into everybody's house. That's quite creepy, isn't it?
Atnas agents do that, kids, when they're trying to play with your brain and brainwash you.
Yeah.
God, that got weird.
Didn't
I
it?
thought it was weird when I was talking about refurbishing my chair at the start, but Atnas is very
I was going
weird.
to ask Andy what he's up to next. What's next? What are you into at the moment, Andy?
I am very slowly recording a comedy podcast for adults.
Ooh.
With a friend of mine in America, who's a TV writer called Andy Bobrow, and we are working on a high concept comedy podcast.
Get in.
Talking about painstakingness again.
Yeah.
We improvised these. It's all on the one subject. We improvised these episodes with a few beats that we might hit. We recorded the improvisations. I then transcribed the entire improvisations with every that I could put down, which resulted in about 950 pages of script. I then cut down each episode to get about 450 pages over 12 episodes, which is about 35 pages an episode. Then me and Andy rewrote those pages together with all the ums and ahs in and making it, again, as realistic as possible. We then performed the new scripts and recorded those, so it sounds like a conversation. And that is probably a really, really good... if that answers your question, it sounds like a real conversation. It sounds like we're just throwing it off the top of our heads, and it took tens and dozens of hours even to get to the point of being able to be performed as if it's a real conversation. And that's before you get to editing and multiple takes. So we're very slowly working on that, and it's going to be called sorry everyone, the Tumbler's Willy podcast.
Okay. Any reason why?
Yeah, but I'm not going to say right now.
Okay, can't say no.
No, but it's not as bad as it sounds.
It sounds excellent.
It does.
Where does the stimulus come from, the initial story?
Oh, just mucking around with my pal Andy, as I say. He's a TV writer in America. He's out in LA, and we were on Zoom when lockdown started, and we just started improvising this bit to amuse his son. And after this improvisation had gone on for about 35 minutes, I said, I think we should try and make this into a podcast. And that was my mistake. And Andy's mistake was saying, yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
So have you parked the Nincompoops? Ask the Nincompoops, or is that?
Oh, actually, so me and my friend Carrie Quinlan, who's a brilliant actor or actress or whatever we say these days, and comedian. I'm not going to say comedian, that's awful. She's a great actor and comedian, Carrie Quinlan, good friend of mine, showbiz. And we have this podcast called Ask the Nincompoops, where we have kids ask us whatever questions occurs to them, and we just lie to them in the most entertaining way we know how. And we're actually talking about doing another series soon.
Oh, great.
Because we used to get kids into the studio with us and have them... it's going to be harder at the moment, so we thought probably we're going to look at doing somewhere we get asked for questions online,
right,
and just have us doing them. So we won't have the kids there, but it will be slightly different. But I think we're really itching to do some more because they're really fun.
Although the giggling kids in the background is pretty great.
It is.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it?
We did a Christmas episode where we just asked for questions, and we had our friend Mark, who works at the podcast place that we work with. He was our question master who collated, and we had him play. We had a bit going where we were like, "You're going to be called, what was he called, Doodles or something? The Christmas elf, not Doodles. Oh, Jingles. Yeah, right." And his shtick was like, I'm a grown man. I've got 2 children. I'm not Jingles. And we were going like, there are kids listening. There are kids. You're Jingles. I'm a grown man. I'm 6'1". You're Jingles, the Christmas elf. And so, even if there aren't kids in the studio, we can find other games.
True. I do love though how you give the kids so much verbal abuse.
Oh yeah, that is always fun.
It is, and just you can really insult small children to their faces without any consequences, and I particularly enjoy that bit.
I wouldn't recommend. I wouldn't. Trust me. Me and Carrie are professionals.
Yeah, don't try this at home. Yeah.
No. It's a fine art of insulting children and making them enjoy that, and I wouldn't recommend it to just anyone.
It is a particularly good bit of the show.
No, you're right.
Yeah,
now you put me off. Great.
There
you go. Do you know what? We won't do it then.
Sorry, but it's true.
No, sorry. For any kids listening, no more fun because the failing writers have told me not to. Sorry, guys.
How we roll.
Sorry, kids.
Oh no, I was just going to say my teenage kids, who strictly speaking are way too old for it. We listen to it in the car a lot.
That's nice. Well, then we'll try and make some more
Yeah,
And,
please do.
However they come out, it will be fun to get back on that horse again.
Andy, thank you so much for
Yeah, I
coming on.
really
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
for having
man.
me. I love talking this stuff. So yeah,
It was really interesting.
Yeah,
really
genuinely interesting.
Well,
Some very good points.
I love when people say it was. I genuinely liked the present you got me for my birthday. Okay, I really.
No, a lot of it was really interesting. Andy.
Yeah,
It really was.
so quite a lot of it was useful.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Oh, I got so many more questions, but we need to let you go, don't we? Because that's
up to you guys. I've got nothing to do. This is my life.
I really wanted to ask you about the musical version of Mr. Gum and the Dancing Bear.
This interview is over.
That says everything I need to know. Thank you very much, Andy.
Thanks so much, guys.
This year, the Dave's Edinburgh Comedy Award has aptly been won by a man called Dave. According to judges, Dave Baird, 42, from Bristol, stood out because his set was so unfunny, it was actually very funny.
Yeah, I mean, I'd been doing bits of comedy for years, like on and off, like, a bit of stand-up, sketches, sitcoms. Then we were having Christmas dinner, and I read out one of the jokes in the crackers, and yeah, I mean, I'd never had such a great reaction, falling about the place. So, and it all just sort of snowballed from there, really. See, that's a little Christmas snowball. Never mind.
From sitting around the house thinking about writing to performing stand-up comedy in front of packed-out stadium venues, Dave's road to success has been almost completely implausible.
Right, hang on, just let me, right, okay. What carol is heard in the desert? O camel, ye faithful. Yeah. I mean, it's been unbelievable, the response. I just pop a cracker and read out the joke. I mean, it's pretty easy, to be honest. I did try and do one of my own jokes once, but it didn't go down very well. So I'm sticking with this for now. Okay, let's try another one. Right. What do you get if you cross Santa with a detective? Santa Claus? Yeah. Bring it on. Yeah, keep it coming. Yeah, applaud. Laugh.
Dave.
Yes.
Davey.
Laughter.
Wake up.
Yes, laugh.
Dave.
What?
Wake up, Dave.
Hey?
Oh, Dave. You nodded off, mate. Oh, John was banging on about Shakespeare or something. You just went. You just zonked out like a light.
Oh, balls.
Hey, but you're sad you missed that now, aren't you, Birdie?
Do you know what?
Silly sausage.
I am
Yeah.
genuinely sorry I missed that. That sounded like a lot of
silly
fun.
boy. I got chills listening to that.
Yeah. I'm not sure chills is the right word.
Good chills. The good chills.
Oh,
not the
good.
bad
Yeah.
chills.
Okay. Yeah. But no, it was good.
That's like a must listen, I think.
I think.
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
All writers should hear that.
Yeah. So you're saying that though, it's just happened. So maybe say it's a must listen before we play it, not just after.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
Yeah, it's just got a handful of people agreeing with you, going, "Yeah, it's a shame more people wouldn't listen
You're
to
right,
that."
John. Well, maybe they'll go and tell other people.
I hope so. That's what we do hope, isn't it?
To listen.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
But there were a lot of things to take out of that in terms of sort of, writing method and that usual thing, wasn't it? About just get some stuff down. Don't worry too much about it. Just get some things in there. But what was a really good one was when he was talking about using specific names between characters, having the characters. I think somebody else, another guest we interviewed, said something like that. Was it Chris Paling said something about once he decided to always refer to a character by their full name, it gave him a better understanding of who they were. I think that was him. But anyway, I've tried that and make sure that I always refer to characters in the same way. Some of them it's first names, some second names, some full title, and it really helps to sort of cement who that person is in your own mind as you write.
Definitely. And do you know what I've done? I've actually stuck a post-it on my shelf in the study that says, Andy Stanton says, just write forward. So that's my little mantra.
It says, Andy Stanton court case date is the...
I think it's a good lesson for life as well, isn't it?
Just to blunder on regardless.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Don't worry
Definitely.
too much about whether you're doing the right
Yeah.
thing. Just get on with it. Just live in the moment. Get on with living your life.
I wonder if the like we've spoken to quite a few successful people, but do you think with Andy, do you think there are any downsides to being so successful in the world of children's books? Do you know what I mean?
What, in terms of if you want to do something else?
Well, yeah, it looks very enviable, doesn't it, his career? But I was wondering how pigeonholed you get. Do you know what I mean? I wonder if it's actually harder in some ways to like swerve and do something else.
Yes, again, John, that would have been a good question to ask Andy.
Again, you're right.
when he was here.
During the actual
probably.
interview. I suppose so, isn't it?
Or does it just open doors,
yeah,
whatever you do? Do you know what I mean? Because you're famous for something. I don't know.
Mate, that really is something you'd have to ask somebody who's ever had any sort of success.
Remind me
in their
next
life,
time we
isn't it?
interview somebody who's successful. Yeah. I mean, he seemed quite happy in it, to be fair.
Yeah.
But,
But what have we got coming up in the future?
Well, next week it's a bit of an interesting one. We've got, speaking of swerves, we've got a bit of a swerve, haven't we? We're interviewing, I guess you could describe him as an accidental author.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would that be fair?
Interesting. Do you know what? I will definitely be there for that one. Nothing. Wild horses will not keep me away from the next
man.
interview.
Unfortunately, I don't think you've read through the Failing Writers podcast rulebook.
No, I haven't. Not the amended
If you
version.
intentionally miss an interview for reasons that can't be corroborated by the other two hosts, then you are on a one-interview ban.
Has it got to be? This
joking.
interview's got to be
Actually,
behind closed doors.
I'm afraid so, yes. So you will be...
Bloody hell! Wow.
Just,
mate.
hey, look, you do the crime, you don't do the interview time.
Fine.
It clearly states
Fine. You do it then.
that. You go to your bedroom, Dave.
I will.
And have a think about what you've done.
Yeah.
And I said think. Just think, okay?
Your time
What are you
out
doing
room.
in there?
Yeah.
Thinking.
All right. But who's the interview with?
It's
telling you.
with...
Don't tell him, John.
Okay, yeah, don't tell him. He's been a bad boy.
Don't deserve to know. Fine. Don't tell me.
It's Simon Griffin. Simon Griffin, who has written...
A book with a very rude title.
Can we say... Are we allowed to say it? Can we say it?
Swear words.
You could beep it, couldn't you, Tom?
beep it out.
It's called fucking apostrophes.
Yeah, I didn't beep.
You didn't
I
beep it,
I
Tom.
didn't
Wrong
beep
word.
it.
Supposed to beep
Sorry.
it. For f***'s sake.
Sorry, do it. All right, do it again. I'll beep it. Sorry.
The is called fucking apostrophes.
Oh, you don't need to swear again, John.
You little tinker. And he's also written a book called Fucking Good Manners. Tom.
I'm not doing it.
Okay.
Call me Little Tinker again, though, if you like. I quite like that.
You did like that, didn't you?
Yeah, I like it.
You let the payments lapse on the beep machine again. Tom.
Yeah,
You got to keep it up.
Put another
Otherwise they
50p
just-
in.
they
yeah,
take
that
it away.
stupid motherfucking cutting bastard beat machine. Oh, it seems to work, actually. I think maybe you just weren't vehement enough with your swearing, John. Try it again, but like really
Maybe.
give it some.
Okay. His second book is called Fucking Good Manners.
There you go, you see.
It worked that time. Yeah.
Just need to be, it's about
That's
oomph,
better.
isn't it?
Yeah, you just got to give it a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but really interesting how he basically accidentally wrote a book.
It's an excellent book. It's a flipping bestseller.
It is, and
And it's
brilliant
just in
idea.
time
If you're
for
looking for a
Christmas as well,
Christmas
isn't it?
present for an awkward
Yeah.
to buy for person that doesn't mind sweary titles in a book,
Yeah.
it's a good idea for that, isn't it?
It is, and it will also teach you how to use apostrophes properly. And we all could do better there, couldn't we?
I'm sure we could. But until then, it's probably time to say goodbye.
You're just trying to give Tom a bit of extra work there.
Yeah. I wanted to get
He is a bit of a though, isn't he? Before we go, though, I just wanted to say we've had an entry for our new feature that doesn't have a name yet. How exciting is that? So we'll play that out next week as well.
Cool. I can't wait.
Very excited about that.
Maybe this week we could call it "Look at my fucking bastard book."
Read this, you shit. Yeah. Great. Brilliant. Well, that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, but more the merrier. If you want to do a 30-second pitch for your book that's on sale wherever it is, just do it. Email it to us or tweet us or whatever. You get it to carrier pigeon. We don't care how it comes.
Yeah,
No.
as long as it's a voice memo of you talking about your book for 30 seconds exactly.
Probably not on cassette though. I don't think has anyone got a
one of
cassette
them
player
anymore.
anymore?
Oh, yeah, no, I could do cassette.
Of course you can.
Yeah.
Of course
Of course he
can.
does. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, until then, let's go home.
Very
Should we all
natural.
go home and have a cup of tea?
Lovely. Carry on writing, chaps.
On to the last week of NaNoWriMo, where I only need to write about 50,000 words. Hey!
Hey, guys, you got this.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Do you know what?
I think I saw it, actually.
Keep that recording in my ears on a loop, and that'll help me to get through.
Yeah. I just, I think everything that you can take out of that, though, I just hope that Andy can sort his chair out.
I know, so true.
Yeah.
So true. It sounds like such a great chair as well.
Doesn't it? Like real...
Yeah, it'd be such a shame if you just had to throw it away.
Yeah. Oh, don't say that, John.
It would be a shame.
No, I can't believe I'm saying it. Hello?
Hello?
Where's everybody gone?